Most people think the problem with rodents is the chewing, the gnawed baseboards, the shredded insulation, maybe a bag of dog food with a hole in the corner. That is what gets your attention, but that is not what should scare you. What should scare you is what happens to your dog after a mouse runs through his water bowl at 2 in the morning. I spent 38 years putting my hands on dogs and cats, and I'll tell you something they didn't teach us in vet school. The real damage rodents do to your pets doesn't look like a chewed wire. It looks like a lethargic Labrador who was fine last Tuesday and now she's not eating, she's running a fever, and by the time you drive 40 minutes to the emergency clinic, you are already staring down a bill that starts at $800 and doesn't stop there. And here is the part the pest control industry doesn't want you to figure out on your own. The fix that stops 90% of that risk costs you about $3.20 on a Saturday morning. I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do, step by step, stuff I figured out the hard way over nearly 4 decades of rural practice, watching good dogs get sick from things their owners never saw coming. But first, you need to understand what you are actually dealing with. Because if you think this is just about mice chewing things, you are going to keep solving the wrong problem. A mouse that passes through your yard is not just a mouse, it is a delivery vehicle. Rodents carry leptospirosis, a bacterial infection that spreads through their urine. Not their bites, their urine. That means your dog doesn't have to catch a mouse or even see one. He just needs to sniff the ground where a mouse walked through the night before, lick a puddle near the fence line, or drink from a bowl left outside overnight. That is all it takes. The AVMA has been warning about leptospirosis in dogs for years, particularly in areas where rodent pressure is high, and the numbers have been climbing steadily. Kidney failure, liver failure, death. In the cases that come in too late, I've seen it more times than I care to count. And it doesn't stop at lepto. Rodents carry parasites, roundworm larvae, tapeworm eggs, toxoplasmosis cysts, all of which can transfer directly to your dog or cat the moment they interact with contaminated soil, feces, or a rodent carcass. If your dog is the kind who investigates everything with his nose and his mouth, and most of them are, then a rodent problem in or near your house is a health problem for that dog. Full stop. Now here is what I want you to think about before I give you the protocol. Have you ever picked up your dog's water bowl in the morning and found it in a slightly different spot than you left it? Or noticed your dog sniffing the corner of the garage with that particular focused interest, the low head, the slow tail, the kind of attention he gives to something that matters? That is your dog telling you something. He smells what you cannot see. And if you've noticed that kind of behavior and written it off, you already know what I'm about to say. The problem is already closer than you think. So let's talk about what the pest control companies charge you for and what you can do yourself for $3, because this is where it gets interesting. A professional rodent treatment for a standard home run's between $300 and $800 in most parts of the country. They come in, they put down bait stations, they seal a few entry points, they hand you a warranty, and they leave. Now, I'm not saying that's never the right call. If you have a full infestation, you call the professionals. That is not what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about is the 80% of cases where the rodent problem is low level and perimeter based. Mice testing the edges of your property, looking for a way in. Rats that have found your garbage or your bird feeder or, and this one hurts to say, your dog's outdoor food bowl. That situation, the exploratory situation before it becomes an infestation, that is the one you can stop cold with things you already have in your house. Here is the first thing you need to understand about rodent behavior. They navigate by scent and by habit. A mouse doesn't wander randomly. It runs the same trail every night, hugging the wall, following its own previous scent marks, looking for the same entry points it found last week. That is both their strength and their fatal weakness, because if you disrupt the scent trail and block the entry point, they reroute. They don't disappear from the earth, but they leave your structure and go find easier ground. The $3 fix exploits exactly that. White distilled vinegar. You probably have a jug of it under your kitchen sink right now. The acetic acid in vinegar doesn't just smell sharp to a human nose. To a rodent with a sense of smell roughly 40 times more sensitive than yours, it is an overwhelming chemical signal that something is wrong in this area. Stay away. It also, and this is the practical part, masks the scent trail they have been running. No trail, no navigation. No navigation, no repeat visits. Here's the exact protocol I have been giving to farm clients and backyard dog owners for decades. Get yourself a bottle of plain white distilled vinegar, not apple cider, not wine vinegar, plain white distilled. It runs about $2 to $3 for a 32-ounce bottle. You are also going to need a spray bottle, cotton balls, and about 20 minutes. Step 1. Walk your property at dusk, not midday. Rodents are crepuscular, meaning they peak at dawn and dusk, so that is when the evidence is freshest. You are looking for droppings, which are small and dark, about the size of a grain of rice for a mouse or a raisin for a rat. You are looking for gnaw marks on wood, plastic, or cabling. You are looking for smear marks along the base of walls, which are the oil deposits from fur that runs the same path night after night. You are looking for disturbed soil, small burrow openings near your foundation, under the deck, along the fence line. Mark every location you find. This is your map. Step 2. Seal what you can before you repel. This is the step most people skip, and it is the reason the vinegar trick fails for them. A mouse can pass through a hole the diameter of a dime. A rat can compress its body through anything it can fit its skull through, and a rat's skull is roughly the size of a quarter. Every gap around a pipe, every crack in the foundation, every space under a door that shows daylight, that is an open door to whatever's living in your yard. Steel wool stuffed tightly into gaps and held with expanding foam is the old rancher's trick, and it works. Mice will not chew through steel wool. Hardware cloth, which is a rigid metal mesh you can get at any feed store or hardware store for a few dollars a roll, works even better for larger gaps. You are not going for perfection here. You are going for friction. Make your house harder to enter than the neighbor's house, and they go to the neighbor's house. Step 3. Now you use the vinegar. Soak cotton balls thoroughly in straight white vinegar. Place them at every entry point you identified in step 1. Place them in the corners of the garage. Place them along the base of the fence where you saw droppings. Place one inside any outdoor structure where you store dog food or pet supplies. And here is the one most people miss entirely. Place one near your dog's outdoor water bowl if you leave water outside overnight, and raise that bowl off the ground on a small platform, even a brick, even an upturned clay pot. Rodents are opportunistic drinkers. They are not going to belly up to a water source that smells like a vinegar factory. Replace the cotton balls every 5 to 7 days or immediately after rain. Rain washes the scent away and the trail resets. Consistency is the whole game here. One application that you forget about for 3 weeks doesn't work. A rotation you maintain does. Step 4, and this one is specifically for the dog and cat owners, because this is where the health risk lives. Your pet's food must never be left accessible to rodents overnight. I cannot stress this clearly enough. A mouse that runs through an open bag of dog food doesn't just nibble some kibble. It leaves urine, feces, and potentially leptospirosis bacteria behind in a food source your dog is going to eat the next morning, face first. Store all pet food in hard-sided metal or hard plastic containers with a lid that snaps, not just rests. An open bag folded over and clipped is not rodent-proof. A mouse can shred through that in about 4 minutes. I have seen it on farms dozens of times, the contaminated food bag that started a $3,000 hospitalization for a dog whose owner had no idea anything was wrong until it was almost too late. Now here is the part where I want to be straight with you about peppermint oil, because you will find it recommended everywhere, and it is not wrong, but it is incomplete. Peppermint oil does repel rodents. Their sense of smell is their primary navigation tool, and the intensity of peppermint oil disrupts it. The problem is that the scent dissipates faster than vinegar. It fades within 3 to 4 days under normal conditions, faster in heat or outdoor exposure, and a determined rodent with a food source nearby will eventually push through a faded scent barrier. Use peppermint oil as a supplement to the vinegar protocol, not a replacement for it. 10 to 15 drops of pure peppermint oil on fresh cotton balls, placed at indoor entry points like where pipes enter walls, under the kitchen sink, in the corner of the pantry where pet food is stored. It adds a second layer of olfactory disruption, and it smells considerably better than vinegar in your living spaces. There is one thing I need you to hear loudly about rodenticides, the poison bait products you find at the hardware store. I understand the appeal. You are frustrated, you want the problem gone, you grab the box, but if you have a dog or a cat who goes outdoors, you need to be extremely careful with these. The AVMA has documented this clearly. The anticoagulant baits, the ones that cause internal bleeding in rodents, accumulate in the rodent's tissue. That means if your dog catches and eats a poisoned mouse or rat, your dog can experience secondary poisoning from whatever toxin is still present in that rodent's body. I have treated dogs for secondary rodenticide toxicity in my clinic. It is not a simple fix. If you choose to use bait products, they must be placed in locked bait stations that are physically inaccessible to your pets and to any wildlife, not just near them. Inaccessible. And they must never be placed in areas where your dog or cat patrols. Here is the other thing about the poison approach that nobody in the pest control business is going to advertise on their product. When a rodent dies from a rodenticide inside your walls or under your floorboards, it decomposes in place. The smell that comes out of that process is something you cannot ignore for weeks. And the bacteria that's spread from that decomposing carcass don't stay under the floorboard. They move. I had a client back in the late 90s, farm outside Terre Haute, good woman, responsible dog owner. She set poison bait under the crawl space in October. By November, she had 2 dogs with unexplained gastrointestinal illness, and it took 2 vet visits and almost $400 to rule out the obvious and figure out that the crawl space had become a biological hazard. The vinegar protocol doesn't leave you with that problem. Let me also tell you about the lore that got lost somewhere between the 1950s and today. The Amish communities I used to service out east, the ones running working farms with barn cats and farm dogs and zero access to commercial pest control, those dogs were not getting leptospirosis at the rate I saw in suburban practices. And the reason wasn't luck. It was infrastructure. Their grain was stored in sealed metal bins. Their pet food, what little they used, was stored the same way. Their dog and cat water was changed daily from a running source, not left in a bowl overnight near the barn floor. Their foundations were maintained, gaps sealed with whatever was at hand. There was no single miracle solution. There was a discipline of not creating the conditions that invite rodents in the first place. That discipline is still available to you. It costs almost nothing. It takes about 20 minutes a week. The number I want you to hold on to is this. The average emergency veterinary visit for leptospirosis treatment, when you factor in IV fluids, antibiotics, hospitalization, and blood work, runs between $1,500 and $3,000 in most American markets. The container to store your dog food safely costs $8. The bottle of white vinegar costs $2.80. The steel wool and hardware cloth to seal your foundation gaps costs maybe $15 at the feed store. The math is not complicated. If you have ever watched a dog who was completely fine on Monday be in serious trouble by Friday and not understood why, you already know how fast this can move. The early signs of leptospirosis in dogs are easy to miss. Lethargy, not wanting to eat, a little extra thirst, things you might chalk up to the heat or age or just an off day. By the time the fever spikes and the vomiting starts, the bacteria have been at work in the kidneys for days. I've watched too many good dogs go through that, and I will tell you plainly that most of those cases started with access. Rodents got access to something they should not have had access to, and the dog paid for it. The protocol I just gave you breaks that access. Seal the entry points. Store the pet food in hard-sided containers. Raise and clean the water bowls. Rotate your vinegar cotton balls every 5 to 7 days. Add peppermint oil at the indoor points. And walk your perimeter at dusk once a week to catch the signs before they become a full infestation. You can do all of that for under $25 total and maintain it for about $3 a month. Compare that to a $3,000 emergency vet bill, and then tell me the pest control aisle at the hardware store isn't one of the most important places you visit this season. That is what 38 years of watching dogs get sick and watching dogs stay healthy taught me about this particular problem. It is almost never the thing you can see that hurts them. It is the thing you haven't thought to look for. If your dog or your cat means as much to you as my animals meant to me, stay with me on this channel. I put a new video out every day. I've got 38 years of things the industry doesn't want you to hear, and I am just getting started.